Queen, what's going on with you?
Hey, how are you?
Good, good, good. Appreciate you doing this. Um, you know, I thought about, a good way or a special way to introduce you. Um, I don't know. So I guess I'll start, what I'm saying. I don't know if you can hear it, but it's gonna come in a second. I think you'll recognize it. I don't know if you can hear it. I don't know if you can hear it,
That's
but
it.
if you can,
You know what, Lisa?
I'll try to ramble off some of your accolades right now. Stauna, you are co-founder of Voices Inc. You are a board member of I Hold the Key Inc. And mind you, I have to read it because the list is long. You are a member of the Society of Human Resource Management. You are a member of the National Association of African Americans in Human Resources. You are also a member of the New York Urban League of Young Professionals. You are also a member of the American Ballet Theater Junior League. You are also a member of the Opera Guild, an affiliate of the Junior Achievement Association of New York. You are an affiliate of the American Cancer Society. You got your master's in public administration, concentration in human management, human resources management, and management operations. You also have your bachelor's concentrating in criminal justice, minoring in law. So, with that said, that was the best introduction that I could possibly give you. Um, that's the best possible one. But above all those accolades, the accolades are cool and all, but the best accolade that you could absolutely have is to be an incredible human being. You are a great person, um, an incredible soul. Um, I appreciate you as a friend, as a queen that you are. I appreciate what you do in this world. You are a philanthropist, a diversity advocate, an HR executive, a speaker, your friend. I do love you, man. Thank you for everything from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for doing this here with me. The list was long, so I felt that was the most appropriate way to introduce you. So again, thank you for doing this with me. Conversations of the heart. We do this all the time. So we're just gonna give the people just kind of what we talk about on a regular basis, man. So thank you. If you want to tell people about yourself, where they can find you, and go from there.
Yeah, no, thanks to you. Thanks to you for being brave and stepping out in the arena and really taking the charge to have these conversations. I know we speak often and we share a lot, and I think it's really important that people get to understand some of what you're speaking. So I really look forward to often and always really listening on the calls that you have. So thank you for the esteemed pleasure of being able to join and learn, listen, hear, and share with you today. So yes, that sounded like a long list, and I was like, wow, okay, we can stop now.
Yeah, that is a grocery list from Costco right there. I'm gonna tell you that right now.
But thank you for that. I'm really pleased to be here, and really looking forward to sharing, hoping that folks would gain something from what we shared today with our conversation. So, ready to jump in. And I don't know. I just want to say this out here. I know there are some topics that were listed. I am unclear
Yeah.
as to where he's going to take this, and just say, because we often have many conversations surrounding many different topics, and so I am all ears and ready. Let's go.
hmm And I don't know how we're gonna keep this under or at an hour. But I mean, we'll try our best. If they want us to go longer, then I guess if you have the time, then we start the live at 8 o'clock. If not, then maybe we could do a part two. Um, so, and speaking of accolades, I kind of want to see this right here is water. It's in a red cup, but it's I'm not as classy as you yet. Mm. Um, so philanthropy. Talk to me about your nonprofit that you co-own.
Yeah. So, I'll start with that. From a very, very young age, I don't know exactly when, but I just I had a fervor to, and I still say it today, and it resonates deep within, to leave the world better than I found it in some way, shape, or
hmm
form. And that's where that kind of came from. And Voices Inc. started at John Jay. Shout out to all my John Jay folks. With Deborah, who I think is on right now. And the big story of it was that, we're in college, we don't have a ton of funds, but we want to do something to help many of these causes that we saw. A lot of these things, like breast cancer, AIDS, all these pieces, we had friends and family, people at school who did have relatives or themselves who suffered from. So the fervor there was really to see what we could do as voices together, right? What can we do all together without having a lot of funding? And so we started the grassroots fundraising efforts by just going asking for money, donations, thanks to all of our friends and partners, as we started to just do a lot of afterworks to earn funds for that and show up and walk. And, we had like 13 people at one point. It was like 50 different people walking in Central Park for breast cancer. And so we continue to do that, and it's continued to evolve to now where, we've gone around the boroughs and Westchester and, got clothes and taken it to shelters. We've done feeding the homeless. We try to do that every year, especially at Help USA Shelter in Blake Avenue in Brooklyn. So we continue to do a lot of work around, and we'll look to expand that soon when we're safely able to do so outside. But we're actually just speaking about doing some like clothing drives, things of that nature. So that's Voices. It's really an opportunity for any persons who are interested in joining our voice. At our voices to really do what we can to help the world be better than we found it. So.
Perfect. And where can people donate?
Donations can be made via PayPal at current. Voices, Team Voices at gmail.com. That's who we are. And donations can be made there. We're looking to broaden our reach. For any person who are interested, certainly feel free to reach me, DM me, ping me, what have you. But we look forward to sharing more as we go through and our reach.
Good. So I used to work in the nonprofit sector myself. I used to do a lot of training classes and teach training courses on employment and job readiness training, and creating curriculums behind that. And one of the biggest things that was kind of jaw-dropping for me was that I kind of took advantage of like just saying, hey, like I thought everybody knew kind of how to go in and do a resume, kind of how to go in and do an interview. And I was very shocked that when I went in to do these things, to do these classes, that people really didn't know how to pass an interview. They didn't know what to put, what not to put on a resume. A lot of people didn't even know where to start with a resume, right? Didn't know about a reference letter, didn't know about a lot of these things, So I was just like, wow, it kind of shocked me a lot, So when you talk about somebody like yourself, right, and of course being a philanthropist, but also you being so successful in the corporate world, and navigating those waters, especially for Black people, and women of color, especially, like what kind of advice or like would you give about navigating those waters of the corporate world?
That's a great question and a great point to really hone in on. Near and dear to me, not unlike yourself, even just folks I meet every day and just at random, there is a real lack of clarity or understanding of just how to make that entry. Like you said,
yeah,
be on a resume. What's that look like? There are a lot of misinformation out there. People unclear about what to add, what not to add, what to include, the length of it. So, really feel like there's a good opportunity to continue to share that information, to say, no, your resume does not need to be one page, right? Don't do your service. Really to think through, well, how do you format that? We have things like Word, thankful for Google, that gives a lot of that information. But if you're really looking for a role or continued growth in the corporate arena, it really is a good idea to speak to a person who's a professional who could help you with your resume. As a Black female navigating through the corporate arena, there are many, many, many challenges. And I say that because not long ago I was consistently speaking to myself saying, there are a lot of these influencers, a lot of groups out there that are really cultivated for creatives. And I'll put that in quotes because I have creators and entrepreneurs, especially women of color, right? And so you see
Mm-hmm.
a lot of fervor and a lot of work around that. But what I hadn't
Mm-hmm.
been able to really find or see is a space for young Black females to really help cultivate a tribe of sorts, really, to think through some of the challenges that we found, and how we've navigated through it. And I've had young women come and ask me that question. I've been fortunate enough to be in a position where I'm often, able to meet a lot of young Black females because I am sitting in a career field of HR where I'm
Mm-hmm.
often meeting many people. And there's really that question: where's the support? Where's that conversation about, how do I speak to a promotion? How do I find out how to be promoted? How do I,
Mm-hmm.
assert that my worth is X or my worth is Y?
Right.
How do I ask for an increase? What does that look like? I don't think I'm
Mm-hmm.
being paid well. How do I begin to understand what the right pay is? And often people say things like, make sure you know your worth, or you should know your worth. And
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense, and then it doesn't, right?
Right.
Because we're invaluable. You don't really put a worth on a person
Right.
in that sense. And so I
Mm-hmm.
break it down to have people understand, really, a salary is truly a culmination of a value of that seat. It's really a pay
Mm-hmm.
for that function to happen. So when you're thinking about what should I be paid, it's really first, what are they willing to pay for that work to be done? What does that look
Mm-hmm.
like? And when you ascertain that, then how you show up in work every day, what you do, the value that you personally add to that is what calls for
Mm-hmm.
that increase. So navigating that conversation is really tough for many people. And I've often offered a lot of advice to say a few things. One, don't assume that somebody knows. Don't wait for
Mm-hmm.
somebody to say, hey, I think you should get an increase. That seldom
Right.
happens.
Mm-hmm.
In your conversations, very, very comfortably, you can ask for a conversation with your superior, right? Simply
Mm-hmm.
saying, I have some questions. I'd really like to understand where I stand, and I'm well placed in my position. I'd like to discuss that with you. And when you go into
Mm-hmm.
that conversation, really have your information with you, and not making it so personal, like I need, I should, but really saying this role calls for these things. And
Right.
here's what I do, and here's the value add with the other things that I do. And in light of that, I really do believe that my pay should be increased by X. And know what you're
Right.
looking for. Not really sitting there and just thinking through, well, what should I, be paid? But come in knowing what that looks like, coming with research. People
Mm-hmm.
often would come to me and say, I looked on salary.com, or I looked on this, and those are not reputable sources. You can find information even on the Department of Labor website, but you have to think through there are many different companies who have many different titles, and the role can be very different. And so that's not
Mm-hmm.
always the true source of things, but really thinking through, doing a market study, looking at many different places to see what does that pay really look like in this particular
Mm-hmm.
location. Because these things are also driven by market, right? The pay in New York City is going to be very different than the pay you get in Buffalo, for example.
Yep.
They're different markets. So really understanding or getting that education, being learned is always going to be helpful, and coming in with
Mm-hmm.
facts is always going
Right.
to stand your ground. So when you're able to sit here and say, as a person of color, I don't feel unfairly paid, and we know that happens. That's
Mm-hmm.
a fact. But here's what I have to offer, right? I've done the research and I found that on average, this role pays this much. Here's what I do in my role today, and here's what I add to that. And as such, I
Mm-hmm.
do believe that I should be paid at this space. If you're denied in that way, you have clear documentation to show that. Walk away and
Right.
send that email. Thank you for that conversation. Just want to recap what we shared, and this is what we walked away with, so that you're able
Mm-hmm.
to, if ever needed, to speak to exactly what you brought to the table. So it's
Mm-hmm.
things such as those that I find folks are very unclear about what to do, and it's really not limited to the Black females. But I think what I'm yearning to do, and I have a fervor to do, is to really build that network of young Black professional women who can not just be mentors, because it's that separation of mentors and sponsors, and we've spoken about that, but to
Mm-hmm.
provide that path of how do you do this, or how to think about this as you come up into this space, so that you can grow even faster than we have.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Perfect. That's dope, man. And so I think a lot of this conversation has to continue because in our community, I feel that a lot of times we overwork ourselves to try to prove our worth. And because there is a stigma, that we have to work 10 times harder and we have just this much rope to mess up, right? And so a lot of times you don't want to ask, you know what I'm saying? You don't want to be bold enough to ask, oh, hey, let's talk about this raise, because what if they don't give it to me and then they might, target me and things like that. Like there's a lot of things that go on in the workplace, especially for Black people, right? and that affects their mental health. Like they'll kill themselves working 14, 15, 16-hour days to prove their worth, not understanding that sometimes you got to work smarter, not harder. And that's a big thing. Like when I go in and I do these workshops and they at a job that they just maybe just don't even like, right? But they're just like, no, but I have to prove myself. I'm afraid of my boss, you know? So like, and that plays a big role. And a lot of times just, hey, my mental health is here, right? Every day I'm going into this job I hate. I deserve this amount of pay, but I don't feel like I can go in and ask this question. And I don't feel like I can go in and have these conversations because they feel less than.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge and part and parcel to everything. So first, I like to remind myself and everyone, know thyself. And I say that often, right? So if you had this, so you probably know where I'm going with this.
Yep.
We have been socially, psychologically conditioned, especially of color, to feel less than. I refuse to allow anyone to call me a minority. I refuse to be labeled as anything that is inferior or anything denoted to that piece, period. I will not allow that into my energy space. Know thyself, really for me, truly does mean, when I look at our young men and women, to say, understand where you come from. And not that you began in slavery, right? I was fortunate to have my dad, being a professor, share with me things of, you know, African culture way before slavery began, to speak. And my cousin who is on now, who speaks to me often about just that, the kings and queens, the math and science created, the money, the pieces my dad shared with me when I don't even know how old, that Socrates learned in Africa, and how they don't share that history with us. So I understood that. I came from a lineage that was amazing. And even from that still, right, to understand, if we don't have that much energies into that space, to then understand that we come from the loins of people who suffered through a brutal transition over the Atlantic Ocean, hurricanes and everything, right? Made it on these ships, who laid next to people who were dying, crackers, all kinds of challenges that we cannot even imagine, and survived that to make it here to this new space, this new land. Then survive that space with the diseases, the different foods, then being forced to, you know, reduce themselves beyond their culture to adapt to a new one. And out of all of that, then slavery and all that came with it, and that's what we come from. Like, we are the strongest of the strongest. And that says a lot. I think a lot of people, when going in to ask questions about, you know, the things that they need, and I thought this one time, I had a conversation with a manager of mine one time, and I said, you know, I was very, very candid. I do feel that I have to work 10 times to just get through. And we had a very open discussion about that, and she hadn't realized that, because she said, you know, it always just seems that you're doing everything. And it's that's what it seems that has to happen. And that's true. That's true. We don't get simply recognized. So when I'm in my seat that I have now, I am often, if not always, shining a light. I am creating change and saying, in the organization I work for now, you know, there isn't a promotion system. It's really just managers saying they want to promote. I refuse. I refuse to have that. I need a lens to understand, where are our diverse candidates, right? Is that even something you think about? Are you recognizing the talent in your organization, absent of the ones who look like you? Because we know neuroscience tells us that if you have a brain, you have a bias. We all have biases. And so to own that and to speak to that, but it's to say, I'm shining a light on that so we could do different and be different. And so we somehow have to be charged to, we're asking to open the door. We need to then also walk in boldly. I own this. I belong here. I work hard. I need this and I should get it. But I think a lot of it is the lack of confidence on just even how to get that approach. Which is why I'm saying it's super important for us to have those networks and to build those networks to be able to get some of the answers that we don't have.
And I think even for myself, in every company I've been in since I was probably the age of 17, I brought my friends and people of color with me in every single company I've been into. And so even when I left, now they can go in and do the same. So I think it's also about just opening doors for our own people as well. You know what I'm saying? And so making sure that you say, hey, listen, I got you in, but you make sure that now you do the same for others too. You
Yeah,
know what I'm saying? So,
I think we're
um,
too often afraid to do that, right? I
hmm
hear that sometimes. Interestingly enough, just last week, I had to deal with a young lady who reached me and said, you know, if she's afraid, she feels like it's reverse discrimination, right? This young lady
no,
who's
I
white,
don't care nothing about that.
really not understanding the unique opportunity to one, educate, two, listen,
hmm
definitely to educate
Yeah. hmm
for that space. I think what I hear often as well, and I'm a big proponent of just that, opening the door so that everyone can come in. I shouldn't feel comfortable being the only black female there, right? In too many rooms, I'm the only black female and the only young black female
hmm
or the only black person.
Yep.
Too often, I have a duty to myself. I hold myself accountable to create more space for others who look
Yep. Me
like me,
too.
don't have that
hmm
fervor or don't have the information enough on how to make it there. And it's not for everyone.
Right.
There are a lot of people who
hmm
are seeking just direction on how to do that. So I think it's
hmm
incredibly important that we continue to create those networks and to have those conversations on, you know, what are
hmm
you challenged with, right? Everyone is
hmm
different. But what is your challenge in making that shift into that space? Because it's not, it can be done, right?
hmm
Many of us are doing it and it can be done, but we owe it to send our hand back and say, let me pull you in
hmm
too. Yeah.
Yep. And so with everything that we just said, from communicating with our bosses, right, and communicating with our coworkers and our supervisors and upper management, right. Now, in our community, I feel like there's a big breakdown in communication, right. Now, that can start from when you're a little boy, a little girl. You know what I'm saying? And I'll say that even for young boys, our black boys, right? I hear all the time, Terrence, men don't know how to communicate, right? So the thing is, I was taught at a very young age that it's very important for me specifically as a black boy to learn how to communicate and communicate effectively because it can help me as a teenager in school, on the job, in the boardrooms, talking to your bosses when you're looking for this raise, like when you're looking for promotion, right? You have to learn how to communicate and communicate effectively at a very young age. And I say black boys because I always feel like women, they got the blueprint at a very early age on how to communicate and communicate clearly and effectively, right? They're encouraged to talk. They're encouraged to express. They're encouraged, to be vulnerable,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's very telling for me because whenever I do some of these workshops and these training classes for self help and self love and things like that, you know who's in there? 97% women, and then you might have a boyfriend in there who got dragged in there by their girlfriend or their mama.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And it's just like, man, there's a stigma when it comes to men, when it comes to communication
Yeah.
and expression
Yeah.
and self-love. You know what I'm saying? And I think that is something that is a narrative that we have to change because it's like, hey, communication, if you talk too much, it's feminine. Everything is feminine, right? And that's a fear for men. But
Why is that okay?
we have to learn how to teach our young boys how to communicate more effectively at a very young age and give them permission to. Because you can't complain about them being 25 and don't know how to communicate when they never had the permission to communicate at 5.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I think by the time they're 25, they have 20 years worth of built up anger, aggression, pent up everything just within here and don't know how to release it. But then now you expect him to know how to communicate, but he was never given the permission to. So, you know, that to me, I'm very passionate about that.
I know. Let's unpack that a little bit, right? So, one, you mentioned a couple different things here that I think can be packaged and parceled together to a point.
Yeah.
Personally, I think I saw a lot of people did highlight that yes, the big portion of communication is effective communication. What does it
Of
mean
course.
look like to communicate effectively? So that's one piece, and we'll get into that. But even thinking through, let's talk about these young men, these young
Yeah.
boys are passionate
Mm-hmm.
about.
Yeah.
And I know you've heard me say that or seen me even write that. We have to really work on ensuring that we validate feelings and emotions.
Yes.
And we do that often to our little girls and boys, right? Be quiet, don't speak, the things that we say and not really being clear on the messages that we're sending and what's being
Mm-hmm.
received. And that they're not always
Mm-hmm.
one and the same. What's intended to be sent is not what's always received, and goes back to the communication. And so really ensuring, and I've always said this, if and so much that I'm blessed to have a young king, it's really that education of understanding that, one, I am here to teach you and help shape you, right? I say
Mm-hmm.
often I give myself permission, and I need for a young man to understand that he has to give himself permission. He has to stand up and be able to speak, and sharing what that really looks like and how to do that appropriately and inappropriately and what that means. How our, as Lisa is so pointedly speaking to, how our fathers speak to that is one thing. And then there's that crucial piece of the feminine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why
Yep.
is that? Why does that sit in such a negative connotation, right?
Mm-hmm.
As human beings, we do both have the polarizing pieces of ourselves are the masculine and the feminine. We have them,
Right.
right? We have both of these energies, and it's to say how can we do better in embracing that? How can we do better
Mm-hmm.
in teaching that is safe, that is valid? Emotion is healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Emotion to be had, anger, upset, happy,
Mm-hmm.
all of these emotions are healthy. What we're not doing, or doing a disservice to ourselves and to our children, is teaching them how to channel that emotion, what
Mm-hmm.
to do with that
Right.
emotion, filled with it, and how to carry
Mm-hmm.
that forward. So for the young
Right.
man who is unclear about how to communicate, because you know what? He's having a feeling. He's having this feeling, and
Yep.
he's not sure what to do with it. And so he
Mm-hmm.
doesn't know how to put words to it. One, we are not often arming ourselves and even our children with the words enough to truly describe what their experience is. We limit our
Mm-hmm.
really just words like, I am sad, or I'm happy. Am I confused? Like really infusing to say, let me help you get to what is that emotion that you're truly feeling, that you're truly experiencing. And then we can work to figure out, well, how do you channel
Mm-hmm.
that best? So we're not doing the best job at that. And so we find out
Right.
that, I often quote Renee, I'm of the school of Miss Renee Brown, and understanding that vulnerability
Mm-hmm.
is at the crux of
Power.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so whenever you have to do something that requires your bravery, it requires you to be vulnerable. It requires you
Right.
it requires you to face the risk. And so
Mm-hmm.
we have to start learning to embrace that part of ourselves, because
Yep.
it's where our character begins. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where we're doing a disservice to.
Right. And I always say that communication, expression, and vulnerability is power. And I also feel that we're raising our boys in an Amazon generation with the Toys R Us mindset. You know what I'm saying? And where's Toys R Us? They're gone. They're out of business. Like we've got to be able to teach our boys to be multifaceted.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, because this plays a role in how they grow up and have relationships as well, whether that be friendships, romantic, because truthfully, it's like, all right, I'm a boy. I don't know how to communicate. My value system tells me that everything is about money.
Uh-huh.
My value system says I need to go out and provide, right? And be the hustler and make the money,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like, oh, and then once I get the money, I get the power, and I get the women. So then it becomes of how many women I can sleep with, right? So to me, it's the fact of we really have to get to a point, right? Like we have to get to a point where we teach our boys that communication is valuable, expression is valuable, vulnerability, all those things should be a part of your arsenal. So when you go out into the world, you know how to be more than just one way. Because in this world that we're living in, women are making a lot of money, right? Sometimes you may not be the breadwinner. If you are, great. But if you are not, do you know how to act in that relationship, right? Do you know how to walk in that path, right? Because a lot of times,
How do you show
huh?
up in relationship? How do you show up in relationship if what you've been taught and what you understand is that your value in relationship to a female is money? How do you show up
Yep.
in a relationship when you're not clear and keen on understanding that your entire being is valuable? How do you show up in a
Mm-hmm.
relationship when it wasn't really stressed, taught, or even expected of you to really build good character? How do you
Right.
show up in a relationship if you don't have the foundations of what it is to be a good person? How do you show up in
Right.
a relationship when you have, an understanding rather than overstanding of how to love yourself and knowing who you
Right.
are. How
Mm-hmm.
are we ensuring that our young boys becoming men, princes and kings, how do we ensure that we are taking you on that journey to become that? How are we as women doing that? And what are our men, our kings doing to do that? What's
Right.
that look
Mm-hmm. And also we really have to get to a point where we say that that providing isn't only financial,
like? Sorry, it's important.
right? I think because some women don't need you to finance them, some women need you to be present. They need you to do different. Well, we already know you, but but we need you to be present. We need you to be there. We need you to listen, to be a, you know what I mean, to be a shoulder to cry on. You know what I'm saying? Like there's many different things that you could provide in a relationship,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Beyond just the finances. And even if you are the breadwinner, it does not mean that you can't be multifaceted. It doesn't mean that. It means that you could provide the finances, yes, but then you have to still be able to do A plus B plus C and D. Just like women can be the breadwinner, they can take care of home too. They can communicate. Like there's a lot of just different things that I feel.
Think about
Huh?
it. Think about this for a second. When we
Mm-hmm.
speak of women can do, women, speaking for women as a whole, this is me being bold
Mm-hmm.
here, right? We were put in position to then, and oftentimes enough in spaces to have to, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
there's a scary space of now young men who, as aptly said there, who weren't taught how to express themselves emotionally because they were taught that emotions were weakness, right? So
Mm-hmm.
now we're in
Right.
a society where you have on average that more females are graduating from college, more females are
Mm-hmm.
getting into the corporate arena. And so when you find that more females, and I'm speaking more so to the Black community even, are finding themselves in positions of being breadwinner, where is his space? What does that look like? And so again,
Mm-hmm.
begs the question to say, how am I teaching you to show up as your whole self when I haven't given you permission or taught you what it means to be your whole self? So now, is there not a fervor to want to have to find it, right? Because
Right.
a lot of what you're speaking to, especially as far as the females and being able to do different things, it's not, a lot of females weren't taught to do these things. Like, we're
Mm-hmm.
taught
Right.
to necessarily go out there and be the breadwinner, but understood back against the wall, this is what I'm left to do, I have to do, I am doing
Right.
it.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have, a culture where that seems to be the norm now because it's happened over time. What's not
Mm-hmm.
happened over time is where you've had the men shift from being able to be breadwinner and just being lost and not sure about, well, where is my place? What does that
Right.
look like? Right. So how do
Mm-hmm.
we now attend to that has happened because it's happening more. It's happening more. It's happening
Mm-hmm.
more and more. So what are we doing to attend to that piece?
Right. And then what happens when you don't know how to move in that type of a relationship, then you get angry and you take your anger out on your partner, right? And I think that's the frustrating part because a lot of women are like, yo, like I can't speak to him, right? I can't talk to him. Like he's angry. I am the breadwinner. I make the money, but to him, he doesn't feel valued. He doesn't feel like he is valued
So
because he doesn't.
who owns that?
Hmm?
Who owns that?
Oh, we have to own it.
And I'm asking because I think there's opportunity on both ends, right? And I
Yeah,
soundly to that in saying that I don't own the responsibility of a man to be a man, feel a man, and do a man because
of
I
course.
can't teach you that, right? But I do own a responsibility for my relationship, for my partner to create space for them to exist in
Hmm.
a healthy way, right?
Right.
That means not sitting here showing up my quote unquote money in their face and really trying to show up to
Right.
them. But at the same time, it doesn't require that I limit myself to be smaller to accommodate.
Right.
So
Right.
you find that we have, and again, going right back to that communication, are we
Hmm.
having that open communication? Is my person, my partner, able to sit here and have dialogue with me in safe space? Does that person feel safe to really share with me the challenges of what they're
Hmm.
experiencing? Or am I here to help that process? It's a really interesting dance that we
Right.
find ourselves doing. I don't
Right.
pretend to have the answer, but I certainly
Hmm.
spend time thinking through a lot of that.
Right. And it's up to us not to self-sabotage our relationship, right? I think a lot of times, like when you're in this space, you'll end up self-sabotaging a good thing just because you're not the financial breadwinner and because you don't know how to move in this particular situation because you're one track minded, so I think it is up to us to not self-sabotage too. And then also to really understand life, like the life. And with life, there are ups and downs. Like one minute, like you could be up here living life and having the grandest of lives, but life is crazy, and life could take you through a whole bunch of ups and downs and arounds. And
Yeah,
it can
let's
land,
talk
like one day
about COVID,
you could be up
right?
here, and the next day that you could be down here. You know what I'm saying? Especially like when you're dealing with jobs. You know what I'm saying? I know so many people that were laid off of corporate America, big banks, making $200,000 a year, and it's gone, right?
Yeah.
And your life gets turned upside down. So I think it's not about always, oh, I have to be this. I have to. No, it's learning how to adjust to the situation that you're
Right.
in
So
and
speaking of
continue to
that,
try to be great.
with what's happened with COVID, so many different things that have happened, and when we speak about the joblessness that we've experienced in this space, and thinking
Hmm.
about it, if a man's value for himself is so
Yep.
caught up in his worth and he's unable to provide at this time, what does that look like in a time that's already stressful? What does that bring to a relationship? What
Hmm.
challenges does that bring to a relationship
So
if he's
many.
right? Because even when you speak to it and we say he's not the breadwinner, but what if he is the breadwinner? What if he is?
Hmm.
And what if now
Hmm.
he isn't, right? Where
Right.
all of what's happened, the situations that we found ourselves in with COVID causes that he isn't. Now what?
Right.
What does that look like?
Right.
That really goes back to, okay, if he wasn't given that information, where do we now think through the responsibility of himself to be his best self, to get into the
Right.
and to really get the understanding of how do I do that? How do I show up as my best self? And
Hmm.
is there space enough for this in this world? Have we created safe space enough for men to really go back and peel the
Hmm.
layers to really now decide? Because I found for me, um, I say this often to my friends, they're probably tired of hearing me say these things, but we spend much of our lives being told who to be and how to be.
Yep.
And at some
Mm.
point, and I'm in my 30s still, right? In our 30s, I find, in my experience anyway, you then get a fervor and a responsibility to decide, right? Like, I know I was taught these things. I know these
Hmm.
things served me, but do they serve me now, right? Because now
Hmm.
I get to decide. I'm a full adult. I get to decide who I am and how I show up in this world. And I have
Right.
a responsibility to find the things that I need to be my whole self, the best self. So in deciding
Hmm.
who am I choosing to be, how am I choosing to show up in the world, I have decisions to make on how to get clear, get clean,
Yep.
and create space for that. And so often
Hmm.
we find that we're not taking on the responsibilities for ourselves in that space because we're too busy
Hmm.
living in what we've been told and taught to do in the first.
Right. And that's kind of where we go with the societal pressures, you know, for men and women of what they think that we should be. That can come from your family, your friends, TV, whatever the case is, right? I feel like with society, they put a lot of pressure on what you should have by a certain age, right? For men, it's about the money, it's about the job, the career, things like that. For women, it's about are you married yet and how many women that you could bear. I mean, excuse me, how many children that you could bear, excuse me. Um, and to me, those are very unfair things, especially for women. I hear people, like people like aunts and cousins, oh, so when you're going to have a kid, when you're going to get married. And it's just like, whoa, like, like time out. You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't know that concerned you, right? You know what I'm saying? And then even when you get one thing, let's just say if you get married, then it's like, okay, so when you're gonna pop out a kid, and it's just like there's a lot of things that's insensitive and actually could mess with people's mental health because that's really huge. Because I've had friends that have had multiple miscarriages. They're trying for children, right? And they can't.
Right.
And now you got your grandmother, your mother, your aunt, your cousins. It's like, oh, so when you gonna give me my grandbaby? When
Yeah.
you gonna give me my kid? And it's it comes from a selfish mindset, and it's unfair, and you don't know what you're doing to the people that you say that you love,
Right.
and that to me does a disservice, and it creates this dysfunctional generational rhetoric.
So
And I love the old school, but sometimes their rhetoric is creating a lot of dysfunction and mental health issues in our communities too.
let's talk about that then, right? So the mental health piece, and you know me, I like to really wrap around the emotional health because I do find a great distinction between the two. right? Emotional
Mm-hmm.
health is part of
Yes.
mental health, but it is its own separate arena in of itself.
Yes.
So the narrative that you shared, in fact, in speaking to
Mm-hmm.
just that, right? And really sitting, I sit in it, right? And understanding all
Mm-hmm.
the noise that you might hear. And certainly I think when you think about your emotional health and what that means to you and what that looks like, I find I created space. I don't get a lot of that in my family. They know better. But creating that aura that there are particular things that I will not allow. And it's not particular people, it's particular things. And so
Mm-hmm.
particular narratives, if you are proponing this narrative, you're not allowed to have that in my space. It's not safe for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's
Right.
disallowed. And while it's not done in a harmful way, right, the expectations that are set, it really forces us to go back into ourselves, into our choosing now. Because you know what, the way the world is and with the information superhighway, and I find, for me personally, Instagram is not always the most healthy thing.
Mm-hmm. Of course. Yeah.
All the pictures and all the et ceteras, and before
Mm-hmm.
you know it, what you're allowing into your space can have a real direct impact on your thinking, and thoughts
Mm-hmm.
becomes things, right? And so
Right.
be mindful of that. There's some that you can do in creating that space to ensure that people understand what you will allow, what you will not allow. And we have that
Mm-hmm.
responsibility, again, to ourselves to create that.
Yes.
But often
Mm-hmm.
don't find that we are able to, for whatever our
Nope.
being, right? To step boldly and say, that's inappropriate, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
get to say that to a person, to say that's
Yeah.
inappropriate, and I will not allow for that to happen, or really, really staying away from that. Because until we start doing that, then we're exposing ourselves to hurt. And the challenge, especially about emotional pain, it's so very
Mm-hmm.
different than physical pain, where we know that, you get peroxide, you put a Band-Aid, and so you have a
Yep.
plan, right? So many of
Mm-hmm.
us have been left to conduct our own surgeries on ourselves for these emotional hurts that we've been carrying from childhood throughout, from the notes that we hear, the triggers that happen, right? So, I'm
Mm-hmm.
been digging into what is my habit, what is my action, and where is that really coming from? Where is that
Mm-hmm.
feeling coming from? Because I often find that it's a testament to a feeling that we felt at some point. And now
Yep.
anytime a feeling comes about because of an action, now we're going back to that habit, that unhealthy habit. So really thinking through all of these things that are often thrown on us from friends, from families, from social media, etc.
Mm-hmm.
How do we protect ourselves in that space? And that only space is the ownership that we have to ourselves to create healthy boundaries for what we'll allow and what we will disallow. And it's not about people, it's really about the things.
Right. And I think a lot of times it's harder for some people to create those boundaries with family because they don't want to, hurt somebody's feelings, or, especially
Real pet peeve.
especially if it's grandmother or mother, or, or something like that. It's,
But that's
it's,
why it's so hard, but it has to be such a real thing, because you know what? If I love me so much and I have a duty to myself
mm-hmm.
to be the
Mm-hmm.
best me and continue to grow to be that as I can be, if I
Yep.
limit it to just certain people, I'm still allowing that toxicity to enter in. And I have to
Exactly.
stop that. And anytime I read this quote someplace, right? Anytime that we're about to say something or do something or show up somewhere and we're thinking, you know what, I don't want them to think, or I don't want them to feel, we are not allowing ourselves to show up as our full selves. We're not
Right.
expressing who we are. And so we're
Mm-hmm.
diminishing parts of ourselves every time we do that. And rather than
Mm-hmm.
doing that and saying, I want to be responsible in ensuring that they receive this in the best way possible, because I don't own your
Right.
feeling. I cannot, right?
Mm-hmm.
I listen, I sit in HR, and so I'm often terminating people, and I do it more often than I'd like, but I know that I
Mm-hmm.
don't own that feeling. I know that
Mm-hmm.
I own how I deliver it, right? So I can be
Mm-hmm.
responsible with that piece, but I cannot own how you feel. I can only own
Mm-hmm.
that I can be responsible in what I share. And so we have
Mm-hmm.
to get bold and courageous and vulnerable,
Yes.
really standing up for ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Owning that piece.
And that's powerful to me. It's because I'm on the same wave as you, because I love me. You know what I'm saying? And I love me. And you're not going to get but so close, you know what I'm saying, as far as your toxicity. You see what I'm saying? And so you can't project what you want for your life on me,
But don't we
right?
do that all the time? so many parents I hear all the time, and that's really something that I think often, right? Who say, I want my child to have everything I didn't, as if to say their child is the exact replica of them. Like, I am not my mom, right? And so, and that we're different in many ways. But for me, for example, and I'm going to speak about my sister, I know she's on here. We're very different people. And if my mom led with, I'm going to give them everything I didn't have, rather than I'm going to ensure that I build great character in these little humans that I have to ensure that they're ready for this world that they're about to face. And where I know Stauna, for example, you know, I'm the one who wants to be left alone. I'm not really necessarily interested in getting the pat on the back or you did well or what have you. My sister may be the one who needs more of that, to understand the individuality and what that really calls for and what that needs, rather than just making this decision that, you know what, I know what I didn't get. My mom didn't do this, my dad didn't do this, and so I'm going to absolutely do this for my child. And then that's not what the child really needs. And so I think we often do that with ourselves and with others, really making these assessments for what is that really isn't.
Right. And then also kind of living vicariously through your child and trying to get them, you know, it's like you said, just trying to get them to have things that you wanted that you couldn't achieve or that you just didn't achieve.
Correct.
And all of that stuff is very toxic, super toxic, and it's a lot of pressure. And you have to give your children space to find out just who they are, you know, and who they want to be, because that's truthfully the most important thing, you know, is give them the room to express themselves and not put yourself on them. And then that's where the
right. We all have have our gifts, right?
Yeah.
We've all been given different things. Like my parents are both educators. I love that part, but that's not my gift. And imagine if they tried to shape my life to really direct me to something other than what was instilled in me, what was given to me. And so such an important piece in understanding or having that fervor to not be selfish, because we're all self-interested, but really finding where that line is between selfish and self-interest, and really towing the line to ensure that we're not coming over. What's in my I'm sorry, somebody asked what's in my glasses.
Of course, you know what it is. Wow. So I'm glad that we're having this specific conversation, because there are a lot of people out there, and truthfully, who may not even want to have kids. You know what I'm saying? Like, I have friends who don't want to have children, but they're saying like, oh my God, Terrence, you don't understand. My family's pushing, they're pushing. It's so, you know, offensive. You know, they don't understand. I don't want kids. It's just not what I want, but they're pushing and they push. And they're like, it's almost like I just want to have a baby because I want to shut them up. And I'm like, please don't do that. Yeah. You want to be able to, if you want to bring life into this world, bring it because you want to have it. Right? You might, because some like that's.
I find we don't take that serious enough. That's a huge responsibility. You are
huge
with the responsibility of growing, teaching, grooming, a life with its own dreams and its own feelings. And we're having a hard time with our own, right? And so having to sit here and help a little person understand what that means and what that looks like is such a unique and I think profound responsibility. I certainly marvel at it all the time, right? I don't have any children, and I'm not going to answer any questions to anybody who's asking why or if I should, but I think it's a unique and a big responsibility, and I don't know that we give enough light to just what that truly calls for. And I think it's all the time because we haven't been taught to think about it as being such an awesome responsibility as much as we've been taught to think it's just a duty that we have in the world. And I think both there's space for all of that to exist at the same time. Right? And we can talk about, you know, the flip side of, you know, the pressures of really navigating through family and, you know, that corporate piece that we were talking about earlier. Like, when do you pick? How do you choose? What does that look like? How do you balance? Can you have it all? I hear that in my circles more often than not, that we discuss that.
And listen, the late Tupac Shakur said, since a man can't make one, right? Right. Since a man can't make one, right? It's like, we shouldn't be able to tell somebody, you know what I'm saying, when and how that they should create one, right? Like that's the rhyme, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? But he said that, but that shouldn't just apply to men. That should apply to your family too. You know what I'm saying? Like, it shouldn't just apply.
right? I think two people,
Right.
here's the thing. I think I don't sit here and lose light to the idea of the man's responsibility in creating life and nurturing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't lose sight of that, right?
Right.
Our responsibilities in the process are different, but there's still
Mm-hmm.
responsibilities in both ends.
Yeah.
I think, you know, I don't think anybody gets to tell any person when, where, how, or what have you that they should make that decision.
But they do.
Independently, people, right, and that's where we have to stop that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have no issues whatsoever boldly stepping out and saying, pardon me, but that's not for your conversation. You haven't earned the right enough to have that conversation with me.
And I admire that.
That I get to say that. You know, there are very few people who have earned the right enough to speak to me and even question some of those topics. And I think safely a lot of people know not to, so I don't get that a lot. But I do think it's something that that no one gets to really own for any person outside of themselves. I don't think truly.
So when it comes to mental,
that some people need some pressure. You hold your pressure, okay?
nah, no pressure here, man. You know what I'm saying? So when it comes to mental health, like what are some of your best mental health practices? Because for me, I like journaling. You know what I'm saying? I know some people like, what, men journal? That's like, it's not like a Dear Diary thing. You know what I'm saying? I like to journal, right?
Yeah.
I like to get it out. You know what I'm saying? So what's some of your best practices?
To be quite frank, yeah, there are a couple of them because I go back into the need that I have for my emotional health and really getting to learn and over time understand what that felt like. And I'll share that in, I tend to be very vulnerable in some of my experiences and sometimes maybe too, and I need to find safety in that. But there are a few things that I identify for myself that feel like a replenishing. You know, you give a lot of yourself into the world. And so for me, especially in all of that happened with COVID, and I felt like the world went through a very crazy roller coaster ride. And roller coasters are fun, so it's not even the most appropriate term. But from coming into the year, really hopeful that the year was going to be great, to going to Kobe passing away, and that was like...
That hit me.
And COVID and just the depression of that piece, to then getting angry with George Floyd and all of the racial upheaval that we've just seen more plastered in our faces. And sitting in a space with executives where I was constantly being called to be part of these conversations, lead these conversations. And I was finding after a time that I hadn't created space for my own feelings because I was busy speaking to a lot of my white counterparts about their feelings. I don't want to say the wrong things, or sitting in the conversations and leading panel discussions. And so I do know for me that I got time to understand, what does it feel like to be replenished when you're not being replenished? So one of my things is travel. It's always been.
Oh, I know.
You know what? It was a fad. It was always a thing for me. And that now I'm not able to do that the way I would like to. So there goes that.
Right.
Writing was a thing for me. I think I started that in like the 7th grade. Here's the problem that I found that I have with doing the journaling. I do it, and there's so many thoughts that are moving so rapidly and rampantly up here that it just seems that the thoughts are coming way faster than I could write them. I will write a book in my head. Okay, literally I have page 2 written, and I'm just writing, you know, the first sentence of page 1. And so that became a challenge, and finding different ways. I think this is where great connection comes to play. So I do write from time to time, but certainly understanding and identifying. I had some great conversations today with some friends of mine about, you know, friend, best friend, different levels of friendship, and really being able to have those dialogues that afford you the ability to really share and do what you're feeling. So you kind of get it out there. So it's not just sitting with you, or you're not just having the conversation, which I call the rumble, right? From Brene, rumble in your head about what you're thinking, what you're feeling, but you're able to express that outwardly. And whether it's to have a person listen, to share, to give insight, or what have you. So for me, it's that. On work days, like yesterday was one of those days where people sometimes don't understand. I will stop working whenever that kind of happens, or pause, if you will. And no TV, no phone, nothing. I'll just lay on the floor. And I could lay on the floor for probably an hour, just laying on the floor. And there's nothing, it's just great to just be in what I call nothingness. But I think certainly dialogue with friends, certainly writing does help, and just nothingness. Those are some of my things for my emotional health. And I'm working on pieces like being able to really ask for what I want and need, because also a crippling thing of what do I require right now, and is what I'm doing or saying really helping me get it? Because sometimes it's really just that I need a hug. I just need a hug.
Yeah,
I
for
need
sure.
a hug. Sheesh. And most
I don't mean to
people
cut you. I don't mean to cut you. We have about 2 minutes left. If you guys want us to continue this conversation, just let us know in the comments.
hold on.
If not, then
You're a dear friend of mine, so I do this for free with you. But
oh yeah,
yeah. No, I'm kidding.
yeah. If you want us to continue this conversation, then just let us know. If not, then we got about a minute left, and then that could be it. So I guess if you want to finish your thoughts, you got a few seconds. Okay.
All right, I'm about to
All
throw
right.
Cash App up here, guys. No, I'm kidding.
All right. So look, I mean, people are saying to keep going. So rather that, then I'll restart the live in a couple minutes. And I'll post this part, and then I'll come right back on, and then we could continue right where you left off.
Yeah, let's hope my Verizon Fios keeps working.
I wasn't gonna say nothing, but I wasn't gonna say nothing since you brought that up. That's on you.
I want to put that out there as a disclaimer, right? That let's just hope that keeps going. Did we cover?
All right, cool. Huh?
Did we cover our topics or no? I'm not sure where we went.
Yeah. We did, but there's still some more. So I'll restart the live in a couple minutes. And we'll go from there. All right?
I'll get a new bottle. Thanks.
I'll get some more water. All right. See y'all in a couple minutes.
All right.
All right. Waiting for Stauna Shades. Well, long time no see. Welcome back.
Hi. How are you?
How are you?
Yeah, I just
Did you refill your glass?
No, I got water. I got sparkling water.
Oh, you joined the crew. All right. Got the water. All right.
She has to also stay hydrated. But
yeah.
I couldn't.
Yeah.
You know, I couldn't figure out what to now drink. I had the Malbec and I finished that, and I was kind of teetering on what to open next, and I didn't necessarily want to continue with Malbec, and then I just decided water works, right? So let's have some water and do that. Again, I just thank you for even just letting us have this dialogue, and I'm really also super curious for. I know there were a lot of comments. I don't know if there were any questions or thoughts, but I really enjoyed also listening and hearing and seeing some of the commentaries that were coming through on some of the different things. I mean, the things that we're speaking about, there's so many different angles and just so much depth too, right? I mean, we literally could have, and you know this, we've spoken about this, an entire conversation on just this navigating through corporate or understanding how to do that, emotional health. And as we are literally jumping into facing a mental emotional health pandemic of its own, just stemming from what's happening in the world, I think it's so important for us to create avenues to have those conversations and speak to how this has literally exposed our lack of connection with each other in the world, where people are feeling so alone and so separated, right? Because social media is certainly not true connection. Connection continues that way, but not true connection. So really looking forward to doing that. And I just want to say thank you. Love you much, because I don't do this without a check.
We know. We definitely know what's going on. We know what time it is.
But for you, anything, anytime, always. So.
No, I appreciate it. I just thought that with me, this is my 10th kind of live, my 10th episode of doing these talks with people like yourself. And I would be remiss if I didn't at least ask and say, hey, will you do this, with me? So I mean, the stuff we talk about, man, I mean, is amazing. And I mean, this is years. I mean, like years of just dialogue that we have. And I say, why not give, a glimpse of what we talk about, to everybody else, man, because I believe that it could help a lot, just a lot of people. And, iron sharpens iron, and we sharpen a lot, you know what I'm saying, for years. So I just, I said, why not take the chance and just ask you, would you do this with me?
You
So
knew.
thank you.
Stop it.
So you were giving tips, um,
Yeah.
about mental health, and so I wanted you to be able to finish those thoughts, not and now that we have the time,
Yeah.
to finish those thoughts. So
I think it's interesting. I think it's very important for us to all be able to identify what that looks like, and it's not always easy to find
hmm
out what is that thing that replenishes me. And sometimes it's first
hmm
understanding how do I get empty. I recall in
right.
high school, Miss Martinez, shout out to Chelsea High School, and all my Lions out there. But I remember sitting in her one
Absolutely.
day and she said, you give yourself to so many people, but you have to save some of you for yourself. You have to do that. And
Mm-hmm.
I heard that, and I was probably 15. Like, okay, let me
hmm
think on that for a minute. So I think it's really important that we understand the importance of our emotional wellness, right? So we
Yep.
talk about financial wellness, and I've done the conversations, the currency conversations, and speaking to financial wellness, and that's something else I speak to. But I really think
hmm
there's a dedication and understanding overall wellness, and that definitely includes our emotional health and what that really
Yep.
looks like. Understanding when you feel empty, understanding
Yep.
wanting to feel loved. It's not to say I'm not loved, but sometimes I need to feel that. And just like
hmm
Renee saying, you cannot pour from an empty cup. And so
hmm
understanding what it requires to fill your cup. And I think a lot of us also tend to have the idea that the cups that we find that we're filling, we are requiring them to fill us up. And that's not always the case.
hmm right.
I do hold the universe responsible for ensuring that is helping me in my desire to want to have my cup filled. But I do know that where I pour over here is not necessarily going to pour back. But I know I'm
hmm
going to get poured. But it's noting that you give up your overflow and not what's in your cup, because you need that.
hmm
I can't help you if I don't have any help to give, right? Think about
hmm
it in terms of just something more tangible like money, right?
hmm
If I need to literally help my family or my friends by giving them the money, or
hmm
that's not something I do, but yes, by lending, and the lend borrow thing is not really a thing for me. I give or I don't. But
hmm
if you have money and somebody's asking for $5 and you have 10, you give them the 5. You may not be getting the 5 from them. You may get it from elsewhere. But if you're giving all of your 10, now what? Then you have nothing to give.
hmm
So you have a responsibility to ensure that you have what you need before you're able to give anything,
hmm
and be mindful of that. And it's okay to say no.
hmm
I say there was a year where I was very clear that I want to operate by really having, a confident yes and a strong no. If I'm saying yes to something, then it's a yes. And if I'm not
hmm
doing that thing, it has to be something really big to get me out of that. But we really have to work on being just honest, true, and loving to ourselves. You have to
hmm
love on you. That's
yes.
the only way else to put it. That
hmm
responsibility with ourselves, for ourselves, about ourselves is really the self-interest in ensuring that we're okay, because it's like the big thing. Lasagna and I speak on this a lot. It's where when you get on the airplane, as you know, I love airplanes. You
hmm
put your mask on first before you put anybody else's mask on, and really it's that idea of you have to make sure you secure yourself before
yes.
anybody, children,
hmm
whomever, right? So there is that responsibility to ourselves to put our mask on first. And for me, that work looks like self-care. That looks like spa days. It looks like
hmm
my eyebrows and everything that's not done. But this is quarantine Stauna. Thank you.
hmm
Self-care, travel, but really being able to identify the things that you need to do for you to replenish that part of you. And the piece about asking for what you need, I am fighting I am in this arena for anybody who's having a problem or a challenge and really being able to ask. I am not an asking person. And I'm
Nothing
happy,
at all. Nothing.
but there is a responsibility that I'm trying to strengthen that muscle of being able to ask
Mm-hmm.
for what I need from those who are in my more immediate circle. So to be able to
Mm-hmm.
say I need a hug, it may sound regular to everybody else. It's so terrifying for me. But
Mm-hmm.
understanding there are days where I just need a hug, right? It was a hard
Mm-hmm.
day. Or I need quiet,
Mm-hmm.
or I have too much quiet. I need people, or I just need to lay on the floor. And I promise you, soon it will be literally. I'm gonna bite the bullet and just book a trip. But we just have to figure out what that thing is for you, and it could be multiple things that could help
Mm-hmm.
you just feel replenished, and getting connected with that, and knowing that true connection is really ideal. I think we're walking too far away from what true connection really
Mm-hmm.
is, and relying
Mm-hmm.
very heavily on social media and things for connection. And
Right.
those things are quite superficial. And that's why we're finding the highest rates of suicide in teenagers and things of that
Mm-hmm.
nature happening in our world today. So
Mm-hmm.
really, really, really important. If I could stress anything, emotional health is huge. I have a family member who is currently clinically depressed to a point where she has really no clear idea of where she is today. And it's
Wow.
scary. It's a deep thing in my family, and it's hard to even speak to it or even make sense of it. But to understand
Mm-hmm.
that emotional health, not mental, right? Brain is functioning
Emotional health.
fine, but the emotional traumas, the ones where we haven't done our surgeries for ourselves, the ones where we
Yep.
haven't spoken enough of, over time, over our lifespan, could cripple us to a point where we lose our minds, literally. When you
Yep.
see people on the street,
Mm-hmm.
you may call them crazy. Some of that is not, it's not mental where they're, they have a chemical imbalance of the sort, but it could be emotional trauma that is
Yes.
unhealed, that they're
Mm-hmm.
walking around with, to the point where they're presenting as completely out of touch with current reality. So really, really
Right.
huge. We do that. Psychologists and psychiatrists, I know in our communities that's not something that's very popular, but
Mm-hmm.
we shouldn't be so afraid of that. We shouldn't be so afraid of that. And
No.
we need to think about, again, how do we show up as our best selves? And there's a couple different websites on just one where, I think it's Black Girls Therapy. I subscribe to a number of different things, but really, to get the person to talk to. I find my
Mm-hmm.
friends are often really the greatest therapy I have, in really
Mm-hmm.
speaking to what my experience is. But we need to do our own surgeries when we're left to, and if we can't do it ourselves, we have a requirement to ourselves to find out who can do it for us, because the emotional effects that we experience are huge, and we carry a lot of that as people of color.
Mm-hmm.
We're carrying
Yep.
the pathology of
Mm-hmm.
the emotional traumas that our ancestors suffered,
Mm-hmm.
that,
Yep.
that are continuing in our life today, and how we attending to that. So really super important that we address that, make it okay, and even now make it popular. Like, I see all these influencers,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, what are they influencing? Let's think about that.
Right.
What is the
Right.
influence that we're seeking? And we
Mm-hmm.
need to really seek further influence that's more helpful to our souls. Like, I
Right.
reach out to you and I'm like, how is your soul? How is your soul
And
today?
like, yo, and I swear to God, like this is real talk now, people. So when Stauna reached out to me and she started saying like, how is your soul, King? I was like, nobody asked me that. Like nobody asked me that question. But like she asked me that question of like, how is your soul? How are you feeling? And that's such a difference of, oh, how was your day? Right? Like that's a typical how was your day. But like when she asked me that, sometimes it makes you stop and think and say, yo, wait a second. How is my soul today? Am I just running and running and running? Am I just going and going and going? Like, how is Terrence in here?
Right.
So that's something that thank you for that too, because I need it all the time, man. Thank you. And a lot of it, as far as self-help and self-love, and emotional freedom, that comes with vulnerability too. Because a lot of times we expect or we ask for forgiveness from other people, but when you're vulnerable with yourself, you'll be able to forgive yourself and be open with yourself so that you can sleep better at night, maybe for the transgressions that you did or the mistakes that you did or that you made. And it's to me, it's very important that we forgive ourselves first of all the things that we feel shame of. You know what I'm saying? So
Going there.
that's something that I just wanted to just touch on right quick.
You're going there, right? You're going there.
Yeah.
The questions are the answers. You will
Mm-hmm.
find that if you're reading a book, right, and you often may not retain a lot of the information if you don't have questions about what the book is really speaking to, because the questions, the questions are the answers. The question themselves what leads us to the answer. When we're thinking about half of the things that we're trying to get clarity about, right?
Right.
And digging through. And you speak so much about vulnerability, and as much as I love it, I hate it. Going into our souls and how we're treating our souls. And when I ask that question, I'm really wanting to know how that really is. And we there's this thing that sometimes is really kind of getting to me a little bit. We're quick to answer, how are you? I'm good. I'm fine. And really to say, wait, let's get away from that piece. I really want to know how you're doing. And then it's because a lot of us are not really prepared for the responses that we will get for the how are you doing? Because maybe how I'm doing is really, really a big answer. It's really a big answer that, are you ready to sit with that? And I have to think about, is this a place, because vulnerability is big, but we have to be responsible in our vulnerability, right? Lay it out on just anybody. And then we could go into the separation of guilt and shame.
Yep.
What is that?
So much of it.
What is shame and what is guilt, right? The shame being, based on some of the research from Brene, shame being something like, I am bad, versus guilt being, I did something bad. And even how we do that with our kids in saying, you're bad, you're wrong. Like really having a person own this part and this feeling that they should not own. There's a separation in doing something wrong or bad. I don't really, respond to right and wrong, so you know this. But really thinking through, what is the difference between I did something wrong and I am wrong?
Right.
I'm really not letting somebody own that. But the other piece that I am always mindful and scary about is how we try to push positivity so much that we deny what we're feeling. Like I was saying,
of course.
Like, oh, blessed and good. Yes, we are all blessed, but it's okay to own that I don't feel so great today. It's okay to hear and own what your experience is. And I selfishly give permission to myself every time for all of the feelings that I am feeling, good, bad, or indifferent. And I know that they don't make me who I am. I don't own them as in I am X, but I am experiencing this right now, right? It's so important to make that distinction of deciding what we're experiencing versus what we are.
And it's funny because I was doing a live yesterday, and my boy reminded me of a post that I wrote. He said that hit him crazy, and he was like, yo, T, you wrote something the other day, and you said that, that we're so dysfunctional that we will good ourselves to death.
Correct.
And I was like,
imagine.
Oh yeah, I did write that.
I'm good. I'm okay. Like, and for me, I am so not necessarily, when I'm asking that, that when I ask how you feeling, how is your soul, I really want to know what is your experience? What does that feel like today? Because it may not be good. And if I know it's not so good, let me infuse some of that into you. Let me infuse some of that life into you that you may need to really help you get through to the other end. I know. Never invalidated or denying what your experience is, right? And that goes to the understanding of sympathy versus empathy, and saying, I'm not feeling sorry, right? But I can understand what it feels like to feel that way because I've been there. And so I empathize that feeling, and to say, how can I support you in this? Because if it's sitting here with you in it and helping you until you're ready to get out, or is it really sitting here giving you some positive words so you could help pull yourself out of it? But I think it's important that we stay true to yourself, because you're best at being you, always, right? You're unique, ready to be the beings that we are. And you're best at being you, so own that. And own that if you're having a bad day. Yes, I'm having a bad day. It feels horrible. I feel like I'm drowning. It's overwhelming. Work was hard today. Yes, I could deal with it, or there's a lot of stuff going on. And so being able to own that and knowing that not everybody holds that, but we should have circles that can. And so for all my friends who are on here, just know when I'm asking that, I'm not shying away from the truth of your experience. I'm leaning into the truth of your experience that we could ride that together to come out of it.
Right. And it shows the difference in just asking different questions too. There's a question from Black Eyes 23. He said mental health isn't a topic often discussed or taken seriously in the African American community. Now I touched on this yesterday, and it's true. Mental health a lot of times isn't taken seriously in our community because we're in denial, and we come from, and I'll just speak for me and what I've seen. We come from a generation of, we'll just pray everything away. We just gonna pray everything away, or we just gonna pray about it and do nothing about it. So we just gonna sit there and like your grandmama told you she gonna pray everything away. Your mama told you that she gonna pray everything away. They tell you to go speak to your pastor and everything is gonna be okay. And the truth is, listen, as a Christian or whatever it is, whoever it is that you pray to, pray. It's not wrong with that. I'm not saying that you pray, but faith without works is dead. So you pray and then you do the work. So it's God has also placed these therapists in your path that you can utilize to get you the help that you need.
Right.
So we have to get away from that generational dysfunction and that generational rhetoric of just pray everything away and God is going to make everything in the blink of an eye. Everything is going to be okay, because you'll find yourself years and years and years in a depressive state and nothing has changed. So yes, prayer is good.
The devil did.
That is the perfect one. The devil did it and you just got to pray it away. And that's like very toxic. And it's like, yes, we get it. And there's a space for prayer. Believe me, I get it. But you also have to do the work on you. Like, we've got to get away from this whole old school, dysfunctional, generational rhetoric that I absolutely hate. And it's just, that's all we can do in life is just this one thing. But we don't have to put in the work.
Right.
We don't got to put in the work.
We have to get uncomfortable. We have to get uncomfortable. And I believe growth happens in uncomfortable spaces. But as you're saying, that piece where people say, oh, I'll pray for you, is this to say somehow just praying for you makes it better. People will pray for you before they'll be there for you. They'll pray for you before they show up for you, right? And so it's like, I'm going to leave you here in your dysfunction and crying, whatever you're experiencing, but I'm going to go over here and pray for you, and that absolves everything.
Right.
So, I have a much bigger view of God, the soul of the universe. The traditional view of it. And so definitely sit strong in the understanding that, we pray for strength, we pray for guidance, we pray for directions. And if we're creating the image, then we ourselves are creators. And so being left to create and to exercise our faith in creating what we would like to see is often where we stop, because we're waiting for it to be done for us rather than acting, rather than doing. And so I think, we're missing some opportunities of really engaging with that power source of ours, really to help us define and get to where we need to be. Because as you said, to that quote, faith without works is dead. What are you saying? You're speaking up and being what you're not doing. And so I think you find a new space of the generation of us really looking for, we need the works. We need the works to and that faith in how to do.
And we have to stop, and I believe to a certain point that, listen, whatever happens in this house stays in this house. But we've taken that and we've put it on steroids to where we don't take anything, saying outside of the Lord. You know what I'm saying? We don't go to therapy. We don't seek the help. We don't talk to our friends. We don't do a lot of these things because it's, what? Everything is just about take it to the pastor, take it to the church, take it to the Lord, take it to your mama, or just keep it inside this confined space and don't tell anybody anything because of it's in this house, stays in this house. No, because what's in this house is staying in this house, and it's destroying our families, and it's destroying our communities, and it's destroying generations. And this is the problem, because we have been taught the same way for so many different years. And it's like something has got to give and something has got to change.
Right.
And
it's like
we are the ones to do that.
We had about community and really understanding what that means, right? And that separation, I talk about neighborhoods and communities. And have we really created community? Because too often you're taught not to share, not to lend it in, rather than being responsible on who you share with, when you share, and understand, you know what? So often we have been left. If you look at the cultures around us, and we're thinking about Black culture and other cultures around us, right? And this push that we consistently have to go it alone, to do it on our own. Let me say this. As I'm here thinking about creating that community, that tribe of young women, young Black women in corporate America and support system, I'm not looking to do it alone. I'm not looking to grow it alone. I'm really looking for a tribe to help build it together. There's no, any accolade and say you created this thing or what have you. And so often we're trying to go it alone because we're taught, hold this, keep it safe, hold it for yourself and not expand it. This is why we're not often pulling people into these conversations, into these rooms that we're entering, because no, you don't share that. And someone have to get away from that and understanding in building and growing, going together is going best.
Right. And a lot of times it's, you know what? He has to go through what I went through. Like he has to pay his dues like I have to pay my dues. Right. Like, wait a second, time out. That's in different cultures, they bring people up. Fine. You know what I'm saying? And they don't make the other person go through everything that they have to go through. But for us, it's just like, oh, we got to make this person go through what we went through. Why do I want you to feel what I went through?
What is that mentality? What is it about? Right? And for me, even when I think often, I share this with some of the people I know, where it's so important for me to say, you know what, when I think about the things that are, if I knew then what I know now, knowing it in my now, I'm going to give it to you in your then, so that your now is so different than mine. And we're just not going to responsibility. And it goes back to all of what we just been talking about, where, it's not praying anything away. It's really the action. Love is action. Love is not a thing that you just kind of, it just sits up in some picture or some odd, right? It's an action item. So if you're loving somebody, you're doing it. How do you love? How do you give? How do you act in that space? And we're doing ourselves a service in that way. And we need to take greater accountability for just that piece.
200%. So when it comes to mental health, within our youth, because now we're living in times where it's, like you said, it's unprecedented times, right? We went through COVID, kids haven't been able to graduate. Kids now, we went from not being able to, they're not being able to see their friends in school, and things like that. How would you, what would you tell somebody who's maybe 10 years old right now? Like, what would you tell them? Like they're seeing the civil unrest. They're going through COVID. They may not go back to school right on time. School's gonna look different. Like, what type of tools would you give somebody who's maybe 10 years old right now? Who's looking at life and saying, man, 2020 is a lot, and it is a lot.
2020 is a lot. I would affirm that 150%. What we're experiencing in the world is a lot. What we're exposed to and we're in the awareness of is a lot. It's not new. All of what we're experiencing has happened before, and we've persevered, and we'll continue to do so. And the challenge too is that in all of our experiences that we've had and our elders have had, and what they have succumbed and come past and really thrived through, we don't give enough light to that. So again, going back to the know thyself and understanding that through all the challenge, the trials, that we triumph. And what does that look like? So I'm usually so very big on character building. So when I look at the kids, the 10-year-olds, and you're kind of pulling me, like, if I had a 10-year-old child, what would I say to that?
Or student, or cousin, sisters, whoever.
I got for my hearts. Really, one, feel that feeling, what you're feeling,
Mm-hmm.
Standing in
Mm-hmm.
it, sitting in it. I'm here to help you navigate through it, understanding
Mm-hmm.
that you have support in it, talking through the
Mm-hmm.
experiences, and at the same time infusing in them the strength of their being to create change, to identify
Mm-hmm.
how they move through. Because I often will say things like, change is our only constant, right? It's the only
Mm-hmm.
thing we have constantly happen in every space that we're in. And if
Mm-hmm.
you are resisting change or fighting it, it really means it's already happened. So what is the best way to navigate through it? It's really understanding, how can I make change work for me? How can I make this
Right.
thing happening work for me? So yes, COVID happened and we're home, right? And I'm not in school and I'm in the house. How can I make this work for me? And when I think about, my
Mm-hmm.
eldest goddaughter and how she's used that to really say things like, she's getting more time to do her work. So she's finding it more successful in that she has more time to think through and complete her work, right? So really
Mm-hmm.
finding where is the opportunities in all things, as a measure of just how we do business. Because this has happened now. It's not to say it can happen again or that we won't see worse or we won't see better. So really
Right.
thinking through how our perception of what we're experiencing is really going to be big, right? So how do you perceive what you're experiencing, and being able to channel what you can gain and what you can grow, what you can build, the positive pieces that you could take from this thing are going to be
Mm-hmm.
essential to your resilience. We have to work at
Mm-hmm.
being at building, resilient minds, thoughtful minds, and
Mm-hmm.
thinking minds, because I find often we are sitting in a space where we're dealing with being told what we should think, and we are having more
Mm-hmm.
and more the inability to think ourselves, like how to think,
Mm-hmm.
how to get
Mm-hmm.
information and make sense of it, how to logically discern what we can really use to take forward, and being stuck in people telling us, well, here's what this is, and really just owning that. So we really have to
Mm-hmm.
start to work to help our kids learn how to think and not just what to think. When I see some of, and I chuckle, but when I see some of the social media influences I don't know, like I'm more so on Twitter than anything else than any of the other
Yeah.
and I'm like, well, what does this person do? Like, what is the story? And these are the kids, the people our kids gravitate to. What are they being taught? What are they being taught that
Mm-hmm.
they're holding on to? So really saying, when I'm teaching you, and I'm so very, very, very proud of my goddaughter, the eldest one, Zai, in that, she really is able to discern and think through no, this doesn't make sense, or yeah, nah, I don't like that, rather than just accepting what's given. Because that's where I
Right.
think we're really having a hard time, when we're finding so much of our people are more acting like sheep than acting like shepherds. And don't get me wrong, we
Right.
need to be led, but we really have to learn or start reintroducing the idea of how to think rather than what to think.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a
Right.
big challenge. So it's really helping that young mind develop that piece and strengthen that space.
Mm-hmm. So, and speaking of like the home and children and stuff like that, I've always said, Operation Heal Our Homes, huh?
I don't got kids, sir, so
Oh no, well, that's what I was getting to, is whether it be your children or whether it be community, is Operation Heal Our Homes and Heal Our community, right?
yeah.
And I think, um, if I could just share, a story for a second. My dad wasn't a talker too much. He grew up in Aiken, South Carolina, and they didn't allow a lot of talking. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of times he kind of brought that energy too with raising me, right? And my mom was the one who always gave me the permission to communicate and to express and to be vulnerable. But the one thing that my dad taught me was presence. The value of presence was immense, and not just for me as his son, because he was at every game, every practice, right? Anything that I was involved with, parent teacher conferences, whatever the case was, like I can never say my dad wasn't there and very active in my life, right? But also, he was there for the kids in the neighborhood too, right? I've had friends of mine that tell me, man, I remember when your dad used to come pick me up from practice and take me home. You know what I'm saying? When I didn't have a dad, right? You know what I'm saying? He would take me to parties and things like that. So I think whether you're a father figure, whatever it is, I think that it's very important to be very present in your community, even if it's not your kids or even if you don't have kids, to get involved, right? And I think it's super important because I think it was about 6, 7 years ago, I opened up an article, right, in the newspaper, and I read about an assistant coach who had, some inappropriate pictures of his basketball, players, right? And when I looked at that, right, it was one of my old assistant coaches that I had 20 years before when I was 8 or 9 years old. And he got arrested for that.
Wow.
Right? And you know what that brought me back to? My dad being present. My dad not missing a practice. Any tournament that I went and I had to travel for, he was there. And he was taking kids with him. That wasn't his own. And that taught me, and I said, man, that could have been me. But at the time, I had no worries because my dad was there.
Yeah.
And he was a pillar in the community. Like, he would take me to parties at 17 years old. I hated it. I'm not gonna lie to you. I hated it. 17 years old, I was about the women. Hey, listen, hey. And he would get up out of his bed at 3 o'clock in the morning and pick me up because he was like, because you don't know what's gonna happen in these streets, and you don't know what's gonna happen with the police. So my dad said less, but he did a lot more. And so it's so important to me to always be present in the community, whether they're kids, they're my kids, whether they're not my kids. But to me, I don't want to share that because I felt like that's valuable for people out there who maybe have children, who are active in their community, or for people who don't. But just your presence matters. Your presence is so important. And just do the work. Don't be afraid to really just do the work and get out there and get with these kids, because you don't know whose life you're saving. Because when I look back at it, that could have been me. I could have been a victim of some of those crimes. It's true. It's truthfully crimes, right? That happened with these kids, these young boys. And that could have been me. But my dad said, no, it could never be you. So I just want to I'm gonna get off my soapbox, but I just wanted to say that.
So that was an important point to call into being, that whether or not you are gifted with the opportunity to be a father and a dad, that does not prevent you from showing up. And it goes back to, again, many talks that you've had and that I've listened to with other prominent people in your conversations about community and what that looks like, and how we need to really build and create community with ourselves, to say that, you know what, you had that in your dad, but imagine the importance of that even for folks who may not have had their dad there, but they had your dad there. The difference maker.
Yeah. And so, like, he just didn't care about me. And it's funny because when I did the live for Father's Day and I did the special live celebrating fathers, one of the guys that came on and he was like, yo, T, my father wasn't there, but your father took care of me whenever I was out, just like he took care of you. Yeah. And he said that taught me to do the same thing because now he has a son, and he was like, that taught me to do the same thing for my son. And I was just like, man, you know what I'm saying? That's just amazing. And he was like, your father didn't have to do that, but he cared about more than just you. He cared about the community. You know what I'm saying? And to me, that was powerful.
Yeah, that's why we don't diminish the role of fathers and men in our communities,
the homes,
in our lives. So you and I have touched on that in how we are not really doing the service enough to recognize the importance of that role. Period. You hear this from me all the time. I love my parents. They're fantastic people. I am very thankful to the both of them for all they've instilled with me. But I absolutely recognize the difference of what I get from my father and what I get from my mom. And having my dad is a difference. I've gone through breakups where I'm just like, I don't need you. I got my dad. Like, I stand very proudly in that, where he's my person. And that's okay. And so the importance of us having both these polarizing figures of what is the masculine energy and the feminine energy that we all have in us, demonstrating for us in real life is so huge to show up. This period.
And I think, like Ice23 said, I felt that losing my father changed my life. And then my good friend Dira said, you know, losing a dad definitely changes your whole being. And, you know, I know, you know, because me and her have had conversations of, you know, just losing our fathers. And my dad passed in you know, 2016, you know, but, you know, he left me such a legacy, you know, and so many gems, you know, that I got from him, and that I can sit here and have these conversations today. And when you lose a parent, and a father, it does change you, you know, it changed me, you know, in different ways, you know, but it's like I said, you have to have a village of people to help you out. So it's like, for me, I need to help processing that whole thing. And I'm appreciative to my friend Jira, who helped me out a lot with that, because it changes you a lot, you know, and sometimes people don't understand unless it's happened to them and they don't really get it. You know what I'm saying? They just go, you know, the whole thing, I'll pray for you. You know what I'm saying? But it's like, all right, cool. But there's a lot more that you need. There's a whole lot to unpack. There's a lot of unresolved things that you go through, you know? So for anybody who's lost a family member, I would truly, or parent especially, or grandparent, or whoever, I would truly encourage you to go seek help, seek counseling, or have a friend, or find a friend that's gone through it and fellowship with them. You know what I'm saying? Because that really truly can help you through the fog of even depression or confusion or whatever it is, or the different emotions that you feel is not normal. You'll find that it's normal, you know, and just understand that grief is real and triggers can happen at any moment, and that's okay.
Right.
You know, so don't think that you're alone. Don't think that it's weird. You know what I'm saying? Grief is a hell of a thing, and it can hit at any time.
Yeah,
And you know, so yeah.
You were talking about just some of those facts surrounding that, right? Like, really not a time frame. You know what I mean? Like,
no.
Some expectation that people have. Well, it's been like 10 years. You should, you know, there's really not a time frame. I don't think anybody gets to really tell you what that looks like or understand what that looks like. And I know for everybody that's a different experience on how we deal with grief, and where it takes us, and how we address it, and you know how when it's unaddressed, what that could linger and be. And so you do have people who, you know, it's been 20, 30 years that they've gone through that tragic experience, and still having not had the opportunity to really walk through it, because it's so interesting. And I hear this often. I had one of my employees who recently had a passing and was struggling with just what to do and how to do that, and not having the time to grieve, because immediately was left to figure things out. You know, I got to think about the house and this and that. And so we often don't find that life often allows for the space and time enough to really even deal with some of the challenges that come with that. And there's not a real true end date. And the idea that life isn't the same, and figuring out what that normal would be like and what it is. And so just being respectful and mindful of that at the same time. Yeah,
and Lady B said, my father passed away 24 years ago, and it's still tough. And my homegirl Dira said, she's pushing 20 years next year, and some days feel like 1 year. It's very hard. And mind you, you know, if I kept the same mentality that we spoke about earlier, about just keeping things in home, and you know what I'm saying, what stays in this house, what happens in this house stays in this house, I would have never reached out to her and said, hey, like, you know, do you have any type of advice, like, talk about this? Because I know, like, you lost, you know what I'm saying? Because not many people really don't know what to say. People don't really know how to act sometimes. It can be awkward for them. So it's like, when you know somebody who has gone through it, you know what I'm saying, use your resources. You know what I'm saying? Because that could mean the difference of you going into a depressive state or you going towards managing it better. And if you don't have anybody that's within your circle that can help you, then go to grief counseling. Find somebody in your local area. Take it seriously.
Yeah.
because grief is very real, and it can bring you into a really bad space in life, in all aspects of your life. It could affect you at work, could affect your relationship, it could affect your walk with God. It could affect everything, and it's something that should be taken seriously. So I just want to encourage you guys that if you're going through something, don't keep it inside. Don't keep it at home. You know what I'm saying? Definitely share and open up yourself. Be vulnerable, because it's only gonna help you.
Yeah, we gotta look
Um,
at
you know,
vulnerability as weakness, right? I think it's for so many of the things that we experience that are challenging, and it just feels like, you know, you have to be strong. And there's always that thing, got to be strong,
hmm
whatever that's supposed to mean, and really not identifying strength in being vulnerable, strength in actually looking for connectivity with someone else who has it, and somehow asking for help. And I speak for myself as far as just sitting in that and fighting through that battle, as well. In the challenge of asking for help, there's the idea of asking for help feels like I'm weak, or I'm not strong enough, or something to that end. And so somehow we have to do ourselves the honor of fighting the narrative of feeling that vulnerability is being weak. Asking for help is meaning that we're weak and that we're not strong enough. And just some of those things that have just been embedded through conversations and just generations of just, nope, you just eat it up, you just hold it all, and you just keep pushing and be strong. And
hmm
being strong can have a really different meaning when you understand that. You know, getting
yeah,
help, asking for help, speaking out, speaking up, and really leaning in, right, is
hmm
really so much more helpful than anything else. Else we're just sitting in our hurt continuously, and we're not growing, we're not building, we're not
hmm
progressing, and that's certainly not helpful to us.
So Black Guy said he's never had that type of relationship with somebody, and he said like his dad told him, don't, crying is for girls, and the man always handles issues on his own. Well, let me tell you about that, bro. To be honest with you, a lot of us were brought up like that. My dad brought me up like that too, to a certain point, but my mom totally combated that. It was like, no, that's not the right way. And I'm gonna tell you, stress is real. Emotional dysfunction and turmoil is real, and that can have really adverse effects on your health. My mom had a brain aneurysm because she was too stressed out. There are people who are having heart attacks because they don't let it out. Like, don't think because you don't let it out that you're dealing with it on your own, because you're not. A lot of times that we think that we can handle things on our own, we can't handle it on our own. We're just screaming it under the rug, and it's building up. It's building up. It's gonna build up, and it's gonna come out one way or another. Now, with that, it could be your health. That's one of the biggest things. Heart attack, cancer, brain aneurysms, all of those things can be attributed to what you have going on in here, because you're trying to deal with it yourself, and you don't have the capabilities of dealing with it with yourself. There are certain things that's too hard for us to bear, but our egos tell us that
Ego.
we can put everything on our backs and just go and carry and carry and carry until your body tells you you
Like,
can't do it anymore.
right.
Listen, bro, listen, I'm gonna just say one thing. If you need somebody to talk to, you can hit me up. I'm here. I'm a brother. I don't know you, but I'm a brother. This is what we do. There's no shame. There's no pride and ego with me. I'll give it to you straight. I'm 100. Like, I don't care about no egos. No, man. Like, I have to be this way. I don't have to be any way but me, bro. I'm here for you. Whatever it is that you want to do. If you want to talk, I'm here. Like, there's no egos, bro. It's not gonna go nowhere. But between me and you, and this is what we have to do with each other. You know what I'm saying? We have to change the narrative about being emotional is for women, because men are dying at an early age because of this same rhetoric.
Right.
Men die from colon cancer because they don't want to get a test because it's feminine, because the test they feel is feminine. Like, we've got to get away from this narrative, bro. So listen, I'm here for you, bro, and I'm extending the olive branch to you, man, because it's totally necessary. And I'm gonna leave some of the talk. I probably just talked too much.
No, 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 no. That's brilliant. I think it's important for us to know we have support and we have community, and while we fight against the gremlins that really will tell us we're inadequate or we're not strong enough, or holding this in and building this stress and carrying everything on our shoulders is what makes us strong. We have to work on understanding that that's different and that's not really true. And the things that we've been told don't hold truth to them all the time, right?
Yeah. Nope.
Because I saw a lot of the note that stress kills. I mean, it literally.
It kills physically.
I can say that I physically have manifested stress in my life that I felt, and I didn't understand. Even like went to doctors, and the doctor was just like, "So you're just gonna go to all the other doctors so they could tell you the same thing?" So we have to be mindful of that and how to do that, and it takes a bravery. It takes a bravery and a courage to be vulnerable and really speak to how our ego gets in the way and allows for stress to happen that could really kill us, right? And that we have to one, speak to this. We have to stop being afraid to speak about it. We have to stop being afraid to own it. We have to not be shy about it, right? Like I can certainly raise my hand to be boldly to some of the challenges. And sometimes it's the vulnerability, and it's like you don't want people to know. But it's not about people knowing. If it's saying, you know what, I'm in it too. I'm in this arena too. I'm fighting the same battle too. And while it may appear something different, understand that I'm here. I'm with you. And it's not I'm feeling sorry. It's not a sympathy. It's an empathy of understanding as human beings. We're all in these fights, and every person that you're meeting at any single day, any single time, is fighting battles that you have no idea about, even ourselves, because while we even share a lot, there's so much happening in our heads that we're not even sure, that we're just holding on to, just trying to figure out, okay, how I'm gonna do this. Like I compartmentalize. I gotta put everything in a little box in my head, and okay, I'm gonna open this box and deal with this now. And everybody's dealing with it in different ways. And some people, it's like jumbled up noise, and it's not in a box. But when we're meeting each other, we're just keying and laughing and not having these real conversations about what we're experiencing and truly being there to help, honor, grow, and understand each other. That's where true friendship, true partnership, true build happens. And we're not doing enough of that, right? We're having too many surface conversations that we're not really helping grow each other, except for just very, very surface. So for me, it's step out and own all of my crap, all of the muddy, the things that we don't want to see, because it can resonate for somebody else and help me in understanding what is happening there too. Then that's what we do. That's what we do for each other. So I commend.
And to go with that, it's like 8 years ago, I remember telling my mom, I said, Mom, I see you out here. You're really working a lot. I said, and you're stressing out about a lot of stuff. I said, you're holding it in. I said, you're trying to conquer the world. I said, you got to stop and take a breath, take a breather. I said, because this can really do damage on you. Right. And then one day I meet her somewhere. We hang out. Then I leave. Half hour later, I get a phone call, and they're like, yo, your mom is sick. Something's really wrong with her. I go back to rush to her. Long story short, she was having a brain aneurysm. Yeah. What do you think that equates to? Like, and it's like we have to call it out too. Like whether it be your mom, your dad, your grandmother, your friends, your aunts, your uncles, when they're doing something or that you can see, it's like there's no more hierarchy of elder. It's like, nah, I have to tell you that you're doing that you're going about it the wrong way, whether they listen to you or not. Sometimes it'll take 5 times, sometimes it'll take 10. But if you open your mouth and tell them, hey, listen, I see you going down the wrong path. I know you're a little older than me, but I see you going down the wrong path. Please change. Like, if you need help, I'm here for you as well. Because our elders are very stubborn. You know what I'm saying? Our friends, a lot of times, they can, they're a little bit more open, but our elders, they're a little bit more stubborn. You know what I'm saying? And thankfully, she survived, but sometimes that's your body telling you, dog, you're doing too much. And you broke me down to the point of almost death.
Right.
And sometimes it'll take that to happen to people for them to really get it and say, okay, I can't be the same way. Because her thing was, oh, well, that's just me. That's in my DNA. And it's just like, nah, like sometimes what's in your DNA got to change. You know what I'm saying? Like that just can't be your answer for everything. Oh, well, that's just the way I am. No, change. You can change. Be better for yourself. Please. You know what I'm saying?
Change is our only constant is the one thing we're often fighting against. We have a question here. I'll let you have that. At this point in
I
your
can't
life,
even see it.
what would each of you tell your 21-year-old self? What does your wisdom tell you? What would you say to your 21-year-old self as I think back on my 21-year-old self?
Oh man. Oh my 21-year-old self. Oh man. I think I would tell myself, oh man, to be to be more mindful um of what I would say my finances. That's number one. I was out there partying a lot. I was out there buying too many bottles when I was 21. I think I would tell myself, number one, to begin journaling at an earlier age. That's truthfully, begin journaling at an earlier age. Um, Learning how to de-stress at an earlier age. Um, Going to counseling at an earlier age. Um, those are three things that I think I would absolutely tell myself at an earlier age, because these are things that I really started to do in my late 20s, going towards 30. I really started taking my mental health seriously. But if I could look at my 21-year-old self, I would have told myself, hey, start doing more self-care, more self-love at an earlier age, and start learning how to tell people no at an earlier age. I am going on 36, and I have a hard time with telling people no. I do, but that's me. That's my thing. But I never told anybody no. If you need to start from me, it was always yes. So I think for me, that's what I would tell people. That's what I would tell myself.
Yeah. I was as you were speaking, I was listening, but I was also thinking about 21 and trying to recall what that was.
Whew. Man, 21. So
yeah.
Golden years.
Imagine, yeah. I remember what Shaniqua did to me at 21, but that's a whole different story. At 21.
Mm-hmm. Just keep track of time. We got about under 4 minutes left. It's crazy.
21-year-old self, I would say, give yourself permission to feel.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
To feel. I think for me, a lot of my challenges with emotion,
Mm-hmm.
Understanding the strength of vulnerability,
Mm-hmm.
asking for help when you need it, knowing that not weakness, that's necessary.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think many things kind of lie in that for me. It was, I think I'm still working on pieces of myself where it's really more so with dealing with the emotions. It's really emotions for me that I have a hard work with. The school and et cetera come easy, but dealing with the emotions of what I'm feeling, being able to honor them and really recognize what they are and what they call for and what they need. That's the struggle. So getting into the work, doing your work.
Yes.
And unlearning and understanding the pieces that I built, whatever barriers, whatever walls to help me get to 21.
Yes.
I didn't need them wouldn't serve me well to continue on.
Mm-hmm.
So really starting now at 30 to understand that these barriers, and I'm having revelations ever so often of, this is what I did. This note from this time when this person said. So I'll give you a quick anecdote. One of my cousins was dating somebody, treating her unwell, and he said, once you have a girl, you have her head. And I was clearly determined to never give a person my heart so that they wouldn't have my head. And so there was this barrier to anybody having my heart, because I don't want them to have my head, that stupid girl, if you will. And that served me for a time, but then doesn't serve me going forward. And so being able to find that sooner is what I give myself. Sure.
Perfect. Listen, we can go on for a longer time, but I think that will be it. Maybe we'll do another one, maybe on relationships. Maybe not. I don't know. Send me the budget. But again, thank you for doing this with me. I thought this was an amazing conversation. Um, you are amazing. You are one of a kind. You are a gem to this world and a gem to my life and to the people that you touch. Um, I love you, Queen. Thank you very much for this. I think this was a great moment for everybody. And keep being great. Keep doing the great things that I know that you're going to continue to do. And I appreciate you so much for the role you play in my life. Thank you so much for doing this with me.
Well, I thank you for one allowing me to have this dialogue with you, with everybody else. I know we do this all the time. I honor you. I thank you so much for being all that you are and all that you continue to be, and your strive and your drive to be a better version of yourself and to give to the world and to continue to have these conversations with varying people. I thank you for it, and I look forward to more. And I thank everybody for joining in and just really being here
Yes,
and
thank you.
looking forward to being able to speak to everybody about so many different things, so many topics. But let's keep striving. Let's keep building. Let's keep growing, knowing who we are and the royalty that we represent and the strength that we
Hmm.
have, and really taking our lives forward and just being the better versions of ourselves, because there's nothing better than being who we are.
Perfect ending. We got 5 seconds. Thank you guys. I love you guys. Keep being great.